It's getting harder and harder to listen to Sean Spicer. You almost have to have or be a spice whisperer in order to make sense or interpret, half the bullshit that he says and half the answers that he gives. Now, I was a little lucky today because the press conference that he gave today lasted for only not even 30 minutes, to be honest with you. But he glossed over and misrepresented so much stuff here that I felt it was basically my duty to go through this and basically break it down on what he's actually saying and some of the bullshit that he's actually putting out there. So here we go, and try to hang in there, because there was just so much stuff in particular that I want to focus on, that mission that I called not a absolute failure, but a damn sure wasn't a success over in Yemen, and also the situation with Australia and how President Trump pissed them off, and they basically called him, just as Mexico did when they canceled the visit that was supposed to take place Thursday, and which is today, and on the following Saturday they called him on Friday and canceled that visit, and his ass called them, or his people called them, so it really is his ass calling them on Saturday, trying to halfway make peace. Now, you notice Donald Trump hasn't talked anymore about Mexico paying for a wall, okay? That was part of the agreement in order to start talking again. And thus far, Donald Trump and his people have kept to that agreement not to talk about who's going to pay for that Mexican wall. I think the same thing basically just happened with Australia, and I'll explain it as he goes into his comments regarding the situation with Australia. Here we go.
So I'm going to try to keep this a little quick. The president signed a proclamation yesterday ushering in Black History Month. He looks forward to engaging in an informative month of events honoring the enormous contributions that African Americans have made throughout our history.
Yeah, and the president obviously should go get a tutor so he can learn a little bit about Black history, specifically about the heroes of Black history, a lot of which are no longer alive.
Last night, the president was honored to host the swearing-in of the next Secretary of State, Rex Tillerson, in the Oval Office. As the president said last night, Secretary Tillerson is a man who's already respected all over the world for the tremendous life that he's led, and now will bring his years of experience to the critical task of making our nation more safer, more prosperous, and more secure. It's time to bring a clear-eyed focus to our foreign affairs, and now with Secretary Tillerson at the helm of the State Department, we'll do just that. We'll strengthen our alliances, form new ones, and enhance America's interests throughout the world.
I don't know how he's going to do that when every time Donald Trump gets on the phone with these various foreign leaders, he's pissing off our allies, so that's not strengthening our alliances. And as far as making new ones, I don't see it. I do see the fact that he's trying to play Mr. Tough Guy with certain enemies, quote unquote, or countries that we don't see eye to eye with, and that shit is not going to work either.
Speaking of the president's excellent nominees, praise is pouring in from around the country for his pick for Supreme Court. The Detroit News said Judge Gorsuch is a, quote, legal superstar, an outstanding choice, says the New Hampshire Union leader. The Richmond Dispatch says the initial reaction was to cheer. The South Florida Sun Sentinel touted his, quote, excellent qualifications. Yesterday, Judge Gorsuch had his first round of meetings on the Hill. Unfortunately, Senate offices aren't in the habit of releasing editorials, but from everything we heard, the judge knocked it out of the park on the Senate as well.
Now, I obviously didn't expect him to cite any of the negative comments that are coming in from various newspapers around the country. So there are those that think that this guy is further right than Antonin Scalia, but not quite as right as Oreo Clarence Thomas. But he's definitely out there way to the right, especially on issues that have to do with big business versus regular citizens. He has, in almost every decision he's made, sided with big business against regular citizens like you and me.
The President looks forward to a fair and speedy confirmation process for this exceedingly qualified nominee and jurist.
He may look forward to it, but this is what's going to blow shit up, because he definitely doesn't have 60 votes. And Spencer's going to go into, well, 60 votes is not the requirement. 60 votes is the requirement in order to break a filibuster right now. Okay, now, what they're going to do is they're going to declare the nuclear option. So then, Mr. Spicer, you're right. 60 votes won't be required in order to get them in there. But that will require a rewriting of the rules, which, as we all know, Republicans have no problem doing, as you will see shortly.
In my last briefing, I read out a list of the senators Judge Gorsuch met with. In addition to the meeting with Majority Leader McConnell, Majority Whip Cornyn, Judiciary Chair Grassley, and Senators Hatch and Gardner, the judge also met with Democrat Senator Joe Manchin of West Virginia.
And as I stated in a video I did yesterday, Joe Manchin needs to be kicked to the curb by the Democratic Party, because he's already given up the ass on a whole bunch of the Trump nominees. So if he's not going to, quote unquote, stay with the mainstream Democrats on these issues of defiance of Trump, then he needs just to call himself what he is, a Republican, and call it a day.
Recently, Senator Manchin expressed his belief that Judge Gorsuch could win enough Democrats to hit 60 votes. I'll agree with the senator there on that one. I mean, we have to have a few Trump state Democrats who want to win re-election.
And that was a shot stating if you're not with Trump, then you're out the door. And that is total bullshit, because the people are against a lot of the bullshit that Trump is putting out there. So you can be a Republican in a blue state if you are centrist enough, and you can be a Democrat in a red state if you're centrist enough.
But as I pointed out yesterday, the so-called 60-vote standard is simply not accurate. Democrats are grasping at straws to block the confirmation of an unquestionably qualified nominee. I'll repeat, neither of the two Supreme Court justices that President Obama put forward were subject to the 60-vote threshold.
Yeah, but guess what? They already knew that they were going to get in excess of 60 votes. So, in effect, that's a lie. They were subject to the 60-vote threshold if anybody wanted to filibuster them. And apparently, Justice Merrick Garland wasn't subject to the 60-vote threshold. He wasn't subject to any threshold because you guys never even gave him meetings, let alone a hearing. So obviously, he definitely wasn't subject to any type of a vote threshold.
Although I agree with Senator Manchin that Judge Gorsuch will probably get enough Democrats to get to 60, it's just simply not ever been a requirement. Now, on to the events of today. The president started his day by attending the National Prayer Breakfast. It's a tradition that continued over 6 decades, going back to President Eisenhower. The president thanked the American people for their faith and prayers that have sustained and inspired him, noting that the 5 words that he has heard more than any others as he's traveled throughout the country are, "I'm praying for you." He spoke at length about the ISIS genocide against Christians and the oppression of peace-loving Muslims, as well as the threats of extermination against the Jewish people, and made it clear that he believes the United States has a moral obligation to speak out against such violence. But
at the same time, he doesn't have believe there's a moral obligation to accept refugees that are fleeing from oppression and violence if you're Muslim.
Encouraged Americans to remain a tolerant society where all faiths are respected and where all of our citizens can feel safe and secure. With that goal in mind, the President remarked that he's taken action to ensure that the United States will not allow a beachhead of intolerance to spread throughout our nation.
Damn. If he said that, does that mean that he's going after the Klan and all the white supremacists around the country? That's what that sounds like to me, and that would make news.
In the coming days, we'll develop a system to help ensure that those admitted into our country fully embrace our values of religious and personal liberty and reject any form of oppression or discrimination.
So does that mean that anybody coming into the country is going to be subject to an indoctrination program? That's what it sounds like.
The President also committed to get rid of the Johnson Amendment and allowing our representatives of faith to speak freely and without retribution.
Now that's going to be a good one. For those of you who don't know what the Johnson Amendment is, that is what gives all of these churches their I believe it's 501c status, their tax exempt status. It might be 401, but I think it's 501c, tax exempt status, so that as clergy, they are not allowed to make political comments in their positions as, priests, pastors, or other types of clergy, rabbis and imams, etc. If they do that and they're busted, their church loses its tax exempt status. So what what Trump is saying he's going to try to do is remove the Johnson Amendment, which is what created that situation, so that all of these priests and pastors and religious people that have these large mega churches and shit can jump on board and basically, cow their congregations into supporting him. That's basically what it means. That's a bad idea, by the way.
In a particular poignant moment during his remarks, the President recalled yesterday his visit to Dover Air Force Base to join the family of Chief Ryan Owens as America's fallen hero was returned home. After honoring Chief Owens for giving his life in defense of the American people, the President quoted John 15:13, "Greater love hath no man than this, that a man lay down his life for his friends."
Donald Trump hasn't opened up a Bible since, I guess, maybe he was a little kid. So that's a throw-in line. Donald Trump didn't a bit more know about that verse than he knows what the other side of the moon looks like.
After returning to the White House this morning, the President held a legislative affairs staff meeting in the Oval Office with his team. The team continues to work closely with Congress to enact the President's agenda. With the nomination of Judge Gorsuch to the Supreme Court, extensive outreach is underway on Capitol Hill, and we look forward to the judge receiving a swift and fair hearing. Between his meetings, the President was pleased to see the EPA Administrator-designate Pruitt was voted out of the Senate Environment and Public Works Committee. As has unfortunately become the practice, the Democrats again boycotted the hearing, requiring a suspension of the rules in order to advance his nomination.
Notice requiring a suspension of the rules in order to get that guy through. Translation, the Republicans basically said, well, we know what the rules are, so we got to get rid of the rules that you Democrats and we were supposed to operate under. Otherwise, this guy wasn't going to be able to get through. So again, Republicans have no problem kicking the rules to the curb when it suits them, but when the rules are against them, they basically will scream blue murder, and when the rules are for them, they are holier than thou, always citing those rules. The Democrats better get their shit together and use the tactics that are necessary in order for them to win some of these battles, because if they don't, their party is going to go the way of the dodo bird. And there's already talk from various factions throughout the country about the fact that the Democrats really don't want the progressive wing of the Democratic Party, and that wing needs to start forming its own party in order to be able to forward its own agenda and ideals, which the majority of America basically support.
Following the strategy session, the president met with Senators Hatch, Wyden, and Congressman Brady and Neal. This meeting was an opportunity for the president to meet with the chairman and ranking members of the Senate Finance Committee and the House Ways and Means Committee to help chart the future of U.S. trade policy. The president has put together an all-star trade team that will work closely with the U.S. Trade Representative and the committees led by these members to craft new trade deals. The president has expressed his concern time and again with NAFTA, which he believes is an out-of-date agreement. The ultimate goal is to ensure that the best and fairest treatment of U.S. workers and businesses, and the president believes that those interests are best secured by bilateral rather than multilateral trade deals. He looks forward to working closely with the USTR and Congress when it comes to issues of trade. For those of you who weren't outside and just saw the Harleys roll up, it's no surprise that this afternoon the president will host a meeting and listening session with Harley-Davidson executives and union representatives. For a list of those individuals, please contact our office.
Now, just so, in case you didn't know it, that meeting was supposed to take place in Milwaukee, but with all of the protests going down in Milwaukee, they decided to move that meeting from Milwaukee to the White House, which, to be honest with you, makes sense only because instead of the president having to travel and burn up the hours round trip, it's better for those guys to come down and burn up their time while he could do some other stuff. I'm just saying.
Harley-Davidson's been an American success story since 1901, when William S. Harley, at age 21, completed the blueprint drawing of an engine designed to fit into a bicycle. In 1903, Harley-Davidson began building motorcycles in the United States, and today the company has approximately 6,000 employees and $6 billion in annual revenue. The company's global headquarters is located in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, which may have had something to do with them getting in so quickly. There's a certain staffer. Today, the president will welcome to the White House the latest generation of Harley-Davidson executives to discuss how to make it easier for businesses to create more jobs and factories in the United States. Beyond the company executives, representatives from the machinist and steelworkers unions will also be in attendance. Their motorcycles have carried our American service members in war. They carry our police officers. They keep us safe. They carry the Secret Service as they protect our presidents. And they bring joy to millions of Americans throughout the world, and others throughout the world, rather. The president is looking forward to hosting these leaders from one of America's truly great entrepreneurial success stories. The American worker built this country, and the president is focused on restoring a government that puts their interests first. A few administrative notes. The National Security Advisor, Mike Flynn, today announced additions to the NSC senior staff. David Cattler will be a Deputy Assistant to the President for Regional Affairs. John Eisenberg, Deputy Assistant to the President, NSC Legal Advisor and Department Counsel to the President for National Security Affairs. Kevin Harrington, Deputy Assistant to the President for Strategic Planning, and Kenneth Juster, Deputy Assistant to the President for International Economic Affairs. Lastly, we had a great reaction to our Skype introduction seats last yesterday. I know we've had a tremendous amount of requests pouring in from around the country. Please contact the press office if you know of anyone that has an interest in joining us in the future. In terms of the schedule for tomorrow, the president will host a strategic and policy forum. Then in the afternoon, the president will have lunch with General Flynn before departing down to Mar-a-Lago later in the day. With that, I'll take some questions. Katie Pavlich.
Thanks for the question. Today, President Trump talked about Christian genocide at the National Prayer Breakfast, and last year, the Obama State Department officially declared a genocide by ISIS against Christians and other minority religious groups in the Middle East and North Africa. Now that Rex Tillerson has been sworn in as a secretary, what specifically is the administration planning to do to comply with the legal obligations of protecting these groups under the UN 1948 treaty?
That's a great question. I think Secretary Tillerson's learning his way around the building so far this morning. He gave a great speech talking about his vision and goal for the State Department. I think there'll be further guidance coming out on that, Katie. Right now, his job is to get in, get settled, talk to the employees, make sure they understood. But back to the issue. Obviously, it's important to the president. It was throughout the campaign. It's something that he addressed this morning, and it's something that he's committed to. He talked about in terms of the executive orders and allowing Christian minorities in key countries seek asylum in the United States. He recognizes that in so many nations, these are the oppressed groups in accordance with how the UN defines refugees. So I think you'll see further guidance with that. Jennifer Whissen.
Before we get into that one, I just want to let you know that there are a bunch of, I'll be nice about this one and say, and throughout this audience of quote unquote reporters or news people, and I'm going to leave it up to you to pick them out when you hear their questions.
Thanks, Sean. I have two questions, actually. Today, the president renewed his promise to protect religious liberty, which he says is under threat. Some Americans see religious liberty as code for discrimination. Can you kind of give us a sense of how the president views this tension?
It's an interesting question because this is something that comes up quite a bit. I think there is a line. We have freedom of religion in this country, and I think people should be able to practice their religion, express areas of their faith without reprisal. And I think that pendulum sometimes swings the other way in the name of political correctness. And I think the president and the vice president both understand that one of the things that makes our country and this democracy so great is our ability to express our religion, to believe in faith, to express it, and to live by it. And that's where I think the important part is.
No, let me whisper a little bit to you. What they actually mean is people want to express their religion and live in a religious way, but they also want to place their religious values on other people and force them to live according to their religious ways. So that in itself, in my opinion, is overbearance, to say the least. I don't give a damn if you're not into abortion for religious reasons. Fine, then don't have an abortion if that's something that's within your ability to do. But for you to basically condemn other people because they want to exercise their right to have one, and you're against that because of your own religious beliefs, fine, you're going to be against it all you want. Just mind your own business and leave people alone. The same thing with the contraception. Okay, if you get these, extreme right-wing religious zealots that believe that you shouldn't even use contraception, and that was basically in the days of the Roman Catholics. I don't know how many people are all the way out there. I do know that there are some, but I think that number has fallen substantially. Then, hey, don't use, if you're one of those people, then don't use contraception and take your chances, but then don't dog somebody else for doing it. Now, that pushes out further to you employing people, but limiting the medical benefits that you're willing to pay for, i.e. contraception. Nobody is forcing you to utilize contraception within your own health insurance. But if contraception is offered in a health insurance plan and somebody wants to take advantage of it, they should be allowed to, especially since contraception is provided in the majority, if not, and I believe it's all based on law, it's provided in all insurance plans at the basically, it's no charge. So the overall plan is priced at one point, and as a man, I don't need an IUD or birth control pills, just like a woman doesn't need any type of prostate, medication or help. So it cuts both ways. Anyway, let me continue. But basically what they're saying is they're going to give deference to people practicing, and I'll just say it for what it is, people practicing their Christianity over people who don't practice the religion of Christianity.
It's a small business owner or employee, he wants to have some degree of expression of faith at the company, and too often those voices get pushed out in the name of political correctness. So he's going to continue to make sure that we not only speak up for it, but find ways in which we can keep that line a little less blurred and make sure that the pendulum doesn't swing against people. We shouldn't impose a religion on anybody. We're free to express our religion or be, not have one. That's obviously in our country an equally valid way of living your life.
So tell that to the Christian evangelists who want to impose their religion on other people and their religious ideas on other people. That's not what you just said, and that's not what actually happens.
But at the same time, I think people who want to express their faith shouldn't be ostracized because they want to live that. Major.
If you could give us an example, if you could, of the pendulum swinging in the direction of political correctness, and how is that going to inform the president with his executive order? And as you may know, a draft is circulating around town, and many have wondered if that is going to be a way to either silence those on the left or be a threat to the LGBTQ community. Talk us through both those.
All right, in case you aren't aware of it, there's a quote-unquote draft executive order that's floating around, and he's not going to comment on it because he got busted before about a draft executive order, and he had to come back 2 days later, and he didn't say the words, but in so many words, he admitted that he lied. So he's going to dance around this quote-unquote potential draft executive order that has to do with religious liberty. Do your own research on that one, but it's damn sure floating around. And I think that something's going to be done, giving Mike Pence's propensity for pushing that type of stuff. Something's going to be done probably within the next week or so.
I think if you look back to the Little Sisters case, if you look back to other businesses that were under Obamacare, what's that?
Would you put Hobby Lobby in that category?
I would, yeah, absolutely. I think they're...
Okay, the reason that he threw Hobby Lobby in is because the Supreme Court justice nominee was the one in Colorado that sided with Hobby Lobby against the people who wanted the contraception included in their medical benefits package, and Hobby Lobby cited religious reasons for not wanting to include it, and that's when it went to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court decided that Hobby Lobby was a person, not the people that own Hobby Lobby and run it. The corporation, it's a closely held family corporation, was deemed a person, and that person did not have to pay for those contraceptive benefits.
Several businesses and several institutions, Catholic institutions and others, that have been mandated or apparently attempted to mandate certain things that they may or may not do or how they have to treat their employees. Those are instances where clearly the pendulum's swinging a different way, where you are not carving out institutions or the ability for privately held businesses to conduct themselves to live according to their faith or their moral compass. And so there's clearly a lot of evidence in the last couple of years of the government coming in with regulations and policies that have frankly denied people the ability to live according to their faith.
From the president's point of view, that's discriminatory in itself.
Well, I think there's, like I said, I think it's a pendulum, and where the president is that he wants to make sure that you don't penalize someone for wanting to express their faith, and that to the extent that we can keep that line a little less blurred and allow people who don't believe in a faith or have an opposing faith, make sure that they are equally comfortable in the workplace. But we shouldn't penalize people or mandate them to abide by certain policies or regulations which are in direct contradiction to their faith.
All right, now let me give you my take on this. A person is a living and oxygen breathing entity that has a heartbeat and brain function. It is a person who is born either through natural means or artificial insemination, but again, born through natural means, not created in a petri dish some damn where, okay? And we don't have the technology to do that at this point that I'm aware of. Lives and dies okay? It can be killed through physical means, i.e., shot, stabbed, strangled, poisoned, etc. Anything that does not fall under those categories is not a person. But our Supreme Court has given personhood to creations of corporations. Okay? You can't walk up to a physical entity that is a corporation and do anything to it. A corporation is an abstract construct of abilities, but it doesn't breathe oxygen. So bottom line, these people, through their quote-unquote conservatism, have granted things that aren't people all the rights and attributes of a person. And all that was about money. That's bottom line, that's all that was. And for all these conservative judges to claim that they interpret the Constitution the way that it was meant to be, that is a crock of bullshit. All right, I'm rambling. Let me continue.
And what about the executive order, Sean? How did
There's right now no executive orders that are official or able to read out. We maintain that.
Okay, notice he said right now there is no executive order, okay, that they are able to read out. We know that. It's a draft that's making its way around media and around Washington. So the guy asked the wrong question. What he should have asked is the president reviewing any information in line with creating a formal executive order regarding religious liberty? Is he currently reviewing any type of documentation to that end?
Nothing new on that front. I'm not there until we have. It's not a question. There are a lot of ideas that are being floated out. I mentioned this the last couple of days, but that doesn't mean part of it is as the president does all the time. He asks for input. He asks for ideas, and on a variety of subjects, there are staffing procedures that go on where people have a thought or an idea and it goes through the process. But until the president makes up his mind and gives feedback back and decides that that's final, there's nothing to announce yet.
See, and that's where the guy should have busted him. So he should have hit him there with, is there any consideration being given by the president at this time regarding issuing an executive order regarding religious liberty? That would have locked him down, not completely, but more than he did.
In light of the tragedy that happened in Quebec City last week, which Prime Minister Trudeau is actually calling an act of terrorism, what is the president doing? What initiatives is he taking to make sure that that kind of homegrown, he was a Canadian citizen, homegrown terrorism, homegrown violence doesn't happen within our country?
Now, notice he's not going to answer the question. He's going to deflect to foreign terrorism and cyber terrorism, but he's never going to answer this guy's question regarding homegrown terrorism.
A lot of things. Number one, he's talked cybersecurity. I mean, he's looking at it from every angle. I think the first thing is to make sure that we look at our borders. You've got to protect your own people first, then you've got to look at the side.
But see, the question wasn't about protecting your own people from external issues. That guy asked a question about homegrown terrorism, which means terrorism by your own people.
Threats, so there is a holistic approach to both immigration, and there's a direct nexus between immigration and national security and personal security that he has to look at, but then it's a multi-tiered step.
He just made a false narrative. There is no tie, okay, between immigration and homegrown terrorism. As a matter of fact, they more than likely are opposing positions. So that was just a straight out lie.
You look at the borders, you look at who we're letting in, then you also look at what we're doing internally with our intelligence agencies and the FBI that make sure that we're looking at whether it's the cyber threats that we face or other terrorist activities, but making sure that we're working with the NSA and the FBI to be ahead of the curve, if you will.
If I may, these are homegrown. This is
Right.
Oklahoma City. There's an American kid.
Sure.
Okay, that's what I'm asking.
That's what I'm saying. But I think that part of it is looking at using the assets that we have here, the NSA, the FBI, looking at using the different agencies to see if we can get ahead of the curve and see things. And a lot of times that's been a very big issue, is getting ahead of the curve for when there are telltale signs, having reporting systems up, working with the various agencies. But it's a multi-effort process, if you will.
That was just a whole lot of spin.
What's that, Kristen? Thank you.
John, thank you. Why is the administration easing sanctions against Russia?
Not easing sanctions. The Treasury Department, it is, from what I understand, it is a fairly common practice for the Treasury Department, after sanctions are put in place, to go back and to look at whether or not there needs to be specific carve-outs for different, either industries or products and services that need to be going back and forth. But I would refer you back to the Treasury Department on that.
Okay, Sean, if you have sanctions and you remove sanctions, okay, that's called easing or eliminating. Easing is a nice way of putting it. So for you to try to flip that off, that the Treasury Department is doing it, the Treasury Department is part of the executive branch, which answers directly to the chief executive, which is President Trump. So President Trump, via the Treasury Department, is easing sanctions on Russia. Plain and simple. What you just said there is a straight out lie.
Hold on, John, the language on the Treasury Department website suggests that you are, in fact, easing sanctions that authorizes certain transactions with the Federal Security Service. Does that not suggest a shift?
No, it doesn't.
From
It is from what I...
Yes, it does. And the website specifically says easing. So there again, it doesn't matter to Mr. Spencer that the official language does use the word easing. It's just like when President Trump used the word Muslim ban, and he himself used the word Muslim ban, and then a couple of days later he comes back and says it's not a ban. If you use the word ban, God damn it, then it's a ban. They use the word easing, so God damn it, they're easing the sanctions. That's just a fact of life.
A regular course of action the Treasury does quite often when there are sanctions imposed, but I would refer you back to the Treasury Department. Yes.
See, he just ran from that because he knows damn well that the sanctions are being eased. I wonder if that had anything to do with that phone call that they had between Putin and Trump on Saturday.
Thank you. Could I ask you to describe the tone of the call on the weekend between the Australian Prime Minister and the President, and also outline the President's concerns about the refugee deal in question? And I asked you this earlier this week, but could you clarify whether the deal is on or not? Because the President tweeted last night, "I will study this dumb deal," implying that he's still considering it.
Right.
All right, pay real close attention to this, because this is just confirmation that Donald Trump got his ass kicked by the Prime Minister of Australia regarding accepting those 1,200 refugees. They are not illegal aliens, they are refugees.
The President had a very cordial conversation with Prime Minister Trumbull.
The Prime Minister didn't describe it as cordial.
We went through an extensive discussion of this deal. The President is unbelievably disappointed in the previous administration's deal that was made and how poorly it was crafted. And
See, it would have been nice if that deal was so bad for him to break down what the terms of the deal was, unless it has something to do with national security that's going to put Americans at risk, which it won't. So every deal that President Obama made based on using Mr. Trump's criteria is a poor deal. But that's a bunch of bullshit. But anyway, let's keep going.
threat to national security put the United States on. He has tremendous respect for the Prime Minister and for the Australian people, and has agreed to continue to review that deal and to ensure that as part of the deal, which was always part of it, that we would go through a very, very extreme vetting process.
Now, notice what he just said. He just said that they are going to review.
Person that is being offered up is coming here with peaceful intentions and poses no threat to the United States. So he has ensured that while he has respect for the Australian people and respect for Prime Minister Trumbull, that we do not pose a threat to the United States of America. That the deal that he was cut by the last administration is something that he is extremely, extremely upset with. He does not like it, but out of respect for him, he's going to allow that process, continue to study, and allow it to move forward under the conditions that have been set, that there will be extreme vetting on every single one of those individuals.
Okay, so now let me say this. Okay. Sean just spun the fuck out of this because, number one, all of those refugees were vetted by Australia. And then, number two, all of those refugees that are coming this way were also vetted by the United States. Now, you got two countries, okay, that are pretty much always on the same wavelength that have vetted all of these people. It don't get much more extreme than that. But my problem with all of this bullshit is they never want to give a step-by-step process on what the actual vetting process is. Now, I saw some of the steps, but I would love to see them issue a step-by-step process by which all of the refugees are vetted that is occurring at this point, and then I want them to tell me what else they want to do in order to consider it even more extreme vetting.
For clarity, the deal itself is still under review, so is not certain to proceed.
Part of the deal was that the deal allows for the United States to vet the individuals that are being offered up to be processed. The president's goal is to make sure that every single one of those people, in accordance with the deal, and as discussed in the telephone conversation with the Prime Minister, is subject to extreme vetting to ensure that no one puts it. But I cannot underscore how disappointed he was in the deal that was made and how he thought it was just a horrible deal that was offered up by the United States by this previous administration.
Okay, so folks, so those guys are on their way. Basically, that's it in a nutshell. And he just basically tried to spin his way around by saying that all those people are subject to vetting. We already vetted them, so that part of it's a done deal. And it's my opinion that in a deal, both parties receive something in a deal. It's not a robbery. It's not a charity, okay? It's a deal. Two parties reach a deal, each party gets something. In this case, the Australian Prime Minister gets to move 1,200 residents or 1,200 refugees off of various islands that are controlled by Australia, and it's reported that the conditions on some of those islands is like inhumane. Anyway, gets to move those people from Australia to the United States, and in return, the United States gets to keep U.S. Marines on Australian soil. And in my opinion, it was pointed out to Mr. Trump that if he doesn't want to go through with the deal, then Australia obviously is not going to want any U.S. Marines sitting on Australian soil, period. He could have further pushed the point that Australia has been side by side with America in every war since Vietnam, and if Australia can't depend on the word of America, which was given by the American president, then maybe we need to re-examine our position as supplying Australian troops who have given their blood in America's various operations around the world. And number three, maybe Australia needs to reassess its position on allowing America to use Australia for its various radar installations, where it covers the entire South Pacific between obviously Australia and China. Maybe your personnel should de-ask the area, and you should no longer have access to Australian land in order to utilize those services. Those are just a couple of the things that the Australian Prime Minister could have mentioned to Mr. Trump, i.e., I didn't know all that. Yeah, well, guess what? Maybe you need to get briefed better, Mr. Trump. So that's 0 for 2. Mexico kicked his ass, and Australia just kicked his ass, because that deal for those 1,200 people is going through, and it's going through soon.
Sarah.
The president and his national security advisor have been clear if the administration wants to put Iran on notice, but they haven't specified what that is. What options are on the table, and are there any options like military action that might be off the table at this point?
So I think General Flynn was really clear yesterday.
That's a lie. General Flynn wasn't clear about shit. As a matter of fact, they wanted to ask General Flynn questions yesterday, and he wouldn't answer any. Okay, when he gave the initial jumped in on your press conference yesterday. Then he held another press conference, and he still was unclear what putting Iran on notice meant. And now he's going to dress it up by saying all options are on the table. Now, when you're threatening somebody, you need to be firm and specific about what the hell is going to happen if certain things are done. And you don't leave it to somebody's imagination, because if I were Iran, my imagination would say, you want to go to the UN and start crying, and that's about it. That's what they could assume would be done. Then on the other hand, they could assume what would be done is that you're going to rain hellfire down on them if they do anything else and create a military situation. That's a very wide gambit of things that could be done. You don't leave a door open like that.
That Iran has violated the joint resolution, that Iran's additional hostile actions that it took against our Navy vessel are ones that we are very clear are not going to sit by and take. I think that we will have further updates for you on those additional actions, but clearly we wanted to make sure that Iran understood that they are on notice. This is not going unresponded to.
Now, didn't Donald Trump during the campaign trail say that if he were president and Iran did anything, that he would blow them out of the water? Well, apparently they just did something, and those boats were not blown out of the water. So that was another piece of bullshit that he spewed out there that people swallowed.
John.
Thank you very much.
Yes. Sorry. Thank you. Sorry. Yes. Right. That's right. John. Sorry.
Thank you, Sean. On January 27th at the Republican retreat in Philadelphia, Vice President Pence had a closed-door meeting with House Republicans where several of them brought up the case of IRS Commissioner John Koskinen. There was an attempt to impeach him last year, which some of the leadership in the House felt was unfair to the commissioner, and they urged him to tell the president that, given his entire record, he should fire him or ask for his resignation soon. My sources said the vice president said, "I can hear you." Is there any pending action on the fate of Commissioner Koskinen?
I have nothing to update you on. Holly.
On Yemen, it was initially described, the raid over the weekend, as a successful raid by the administration. There are now some questions that CENTCOM is raising about the possibility of additional civilian casualties. So I've got a couple of questions for you on this one.
Yeah.
Would you still stand by your characterization as the raid is successful? Was the president given multiple options about this raid, or just one? And were there consultations with the prior administration's national security officials, military officials about the raid moving forward?
Thank you. Actually, I'd like to just walk through that. I appreciate you bringing that up.
All right, so now he's going to give us a timeline, okay? But just so that you know, SEAL Team 6 and their commanding officers do not consider that mission to be a success because they lost a member of the team. A success would have been to accomplish the mission without the loss of life by any member of the team.
There is some, let's go through the TikTok on that raid. On November 7th, CENTCOM submitted the plan to DOD. Clearly that was under the last administration. Legal teams were involved immediately when it was submitted to DOD. On December 19th, the plan was approved by the Department of Defense and recommended that it be moved ahead. It was sent then to the National Security Council staff here in the White House. Again, this all happened under the previous administration. On January 6th, there was an interagency deputies meeting. The deputies recommended at that time that they go ahead. It was so easily approved, it was sent straight up. The conclusion to hold was at that time to hold for what they called a moonless night, which by calendar wouldn't occur until then President-elect Trump was President Trump. On January 24th, shortly after taking office.
All right, I stopped it there because there was so much time in between the initial go on the plan and Donald Trump taking office that a major review should have taken place to make sure that everything is okay. And that's what Mr. Spencer is going to say occurred. But apparently that was a lie.
Secretary Defense, then Mattis, read the memo, resent it back up to the White House, conveying his support. On the 25th of January, the president was briefed by General Flynn on Secretary Mattis's recommendation and the status of the operation, or potential operation. The president asked to see Secretary Mattis and Joint Chiefs of Staff Dunford. He then, on that evening, had a dinner meeting, which included the president, the vice president, Secretary Mattis, Chairman Dunford, Chief of Staff Priebus, Jared Kushner, Chief Strategist Bannon, General Kellogg, General Flynn, and CIA Director Pompeo, where the operation was laid out in great extent. The indication at that time was to go ahead. On Friday, the 26th in the morning, the Deputies Committee met again. It was not a necessary step because they had previously recommended and also reaffirmed their support for that. On January 26th, the President signed the memo authorizing the action. So it was not only was it a very, very thought out process by this administration. It had started back in November 7th in terms of clearly well before that, but it was a move forward by CENTCOM on November 7th. This was a very, very well thought out and executed effort.
That is fucking bullshit. That is such bullshit. I can't believe that he even took the time to go through the steps. Okay, let's concentrate. Number one, Obama didn't give the green light. Trump did. So that is his mission. He could try to push that shit back on Obama all he wants. He was the man who signed off on the mission. Therefore, it's his mission. That's number one. Number two, okay, where was if everybody around that table was so smart, where was the backup plan, the contingency plan? Where was the current intelligence, okay? Because their intelligence, it's been reported that their intelligence was like completely out of date on the thing, okay? Again, no contingency plan, no backup support. They had to, when they got into that area, they were surrounded. When they landed, they were surrounded. They were taking fire from 360 degrees. What kind of a goddamn operation lands in the middle of a hot zone and takes fire from 360 degrees? You don't do that. And their only option was to call in fire to get those people that were firing on them off of their asses. And some of that fire probably is what killed a bunch of the innocent people. But so as far as I'm concerned, that's not a success if you got to go through all of that bullshit. That's a clusterfuck.
Where was the president the night of the raid? How did he learn about Chief Owens' death? And do you still stand by your characterization that it was successful?
The president was here in the residence. He was kept in touch with his national security staff.
He wasn't even in the fucking situation room monitoring that operation real time. And that was his first operation. You would have thought that he would have wanted to watch it from start to finish, but apparently that wasn't interesting enough or important enough for him to do.
Secretary Mattis and others have kept him updated on both the raid and the death of Chief Owens, as well as the 4 other individuals that were injured. So he was kept apprised of the situation throughout the evening. And again, I think I would go back to what I said yesterday. It's hard to ever call something a complete success when you have the loss of life.
SEAL Team 6 doesn't call that a success, period. But you guys are so quick to try to get out there to trumpet this great thing that had been done under Donald Trump's watch, that you didn't realize the consequences once all of the information came out.
Or people injured. But I think when you look at the totality of what was gained to prevent the future loss of life, here.
And we'll never know what was gained in order to prevent the future loss of life. So that's just a lock, stock answer that you can throw out there and nobody can dispute it or disprove it.
America and against our people and our institutions, and probably throughout the world in terms of what some of these individuals could have done. I think it is a successful operation by all standards. It is.
I can't believe he said that it's a successful operation by all standards. That's another bullshit lie.
And again, I want to reiterate, it is tough to ever use the word success when you know that somebody has lost their life. But when...
Yeah, it might be tough to use the word, but you don't seem to be having much of a problem using it.
You go back and look at an individual that dedicated their life to serving this country and went over and over and over again, knowing that this was not only the risk that he took, but wanted to do it because he knew the threat that these kind of individuals pose to our country and to our people. You know, that's while not a success that you lost him, you know that he died in sacrifice for someone else here in this nation. Hunter Walker.
Just so that you know, condolences to the family of the fallen hero. And they have promoted him posthumously to a higher rank, which hopefully will help out his widow and his kids as far as retirement benefits are concerned, because I believe he had enough time in order to qualify for his retirement.
Thank you, Sean. I've seen some criticism of the president's remarks at the prayer breakfast this morning. Can you shed any light on why?
That one I'm just going to run past. Okay, so in the interest of trying to keep this video as brief as possible, that last question that I ran past was the last question in the press conference, which ran approximately 30 minutes, which is about 25 minutes shorter than the press conferences he has held in the past. We need a Sean Spicer whisperer to interpret the bullshit that this guy throws out there.